A second sun once burned in Earth's sky. This is not a scene from a science fiction film, but a real event documented across thousands of years of human history. From ancient Egyptian pharaohs to soldiers in the trenches of World War I, credible witnesses have looked up and seen two suns hanging in the heavens. You are about to embark on a journey through 30 of these astonishing historical accounts, a journey that will fundamentally challenge what you think is possible in our own sky. We will decipher the cryptic omens that terrified kings and explore the scientific mysteries that still puzzle experts today. What force could create such an impossible sight, and why does this vision haunt our collective memory? What would you believe if you saw two suns rise tomorrow? A fractured slab of stone from the sands of ancient Egypt holds our first clue. During the reign of the heretic pharaoh Akhenaten, around the year 1350 before the Common Era, a royal stele was carved to commemorate a celestial event so strange it was interpreted as a direct message from the gods. The damaged inscription speaks of the sun's double appearing at dawn, a second brilliant orb sharing the sky with Ra. For Akhenaten, who had recently overthrown Egypt's entire pantheon to worship a single sun god, Aten, this was not a mere curiosity. It was a powerful divine endorsement of his radical new monotheism. The pharaoh and his priests likely saw this double sun as Aten's ultimate blessing, a sign that his religious revolution was destined to succeed. This interpretation fueled his campaign, leading to the closure of temples dedicated to other gods and upending a society's spiritual life overnight. But what natural phenomenon could have created such a convincing divine signal? One strong possibility is a parhelion, an atmospheric effect we now call a sundog. This occurs when sunlight refracts through countless ice crystals high in the sky, creating vivid patches of light that flank the real sun, sometimes appearing just as bright and defined as the star itself. Under the clear, cold desert dawn, the conditions would have been perfect for such a spectacle. Alternatively, an incredibly close and brilliant conjunction of planets, perhaps Venus and Jupiter, could have momentarily mimicked a second sun near the horizon. Yet to the people of that time, there was no scientific explanation, only awe and terror. The appearance of two suns was an omen that reshaped a civilization, proving from our very first account that this mystery is not just about light in the sky, but about the profound power of what we choose to believe when the heavens themselves seem to break their own rules. Centuries later, and thousands of miles to the east, another civilization looked up and recorded the same impossible sight. The Bamboo Annals, a chronicle of ancient China, contain a stark entry from around the year 800 before the Common Era. It states simply that two suns appeared together in the sky, and they remained there for an entire day. This was not a fleeting glimpse, but a prolonged celestial event witnessed by an entire culture. The court astronomers of the Zhou dynasty were not casual stargazers. They were highly trained officials whose primary duty was to read the heavens for signs. Every comet, every eclipse, every unusual light was meticulously documented and interpreted as a message concerning the emperor's mandate of heaven, his divine right to rule. The appearance of two suns was the ultimate omen of disorder. In the cosmology of the time, there was only one sun, just as there was only one legitimate emperor. A second sun could only be seen as a rival, a direct challenge to the established order that threatened to plunge the kingdom into chaos. This single line in the annals would have sent shockwaves through the imperial court, triggering debates, purges, and perhaps even wars as factions vied to interpret this cosmic portent. But what were they actually seeing that lasted for a full 24 hours? A supernova, the catastrophic explosion of a distant star, is one compelling possibility. A new star could blaze with the intensity of a second sun for weeks before fading, a phenomenon Chinese astronomers did document at other times. Yet the record specifically says two suns appearing together, which suggests something different, something that shared the sun's path across the sky. This points toward an atmospheric phenomenon of incredible persistence and brilliance, perhaps a complex parhelion involving high-altitude ice crystals that lingered for an unprecedented duration, or even the rare and dazzling passage of a great comet positioned perfectly to mimic a sun. Whatever the cause, the event was real enough to be carved into history, a testament to the profound fear and fascination that grips humanity when the sky presents us with a duplicate of our most vital star. A world away from the imperial courts of China, the same celestial anomaly ignited a very different kind of fear on the battlefields of the ancient Mediterranean. The Roman historian Livy recorded a chilling series of events for the year 214 before the Common Era, a time when the Roman Republic was fighting for its very survival against the Carthaginian general Hannibal. Livy writes that the sun was seen by night and two suns by day. For the Romans, these were not mere curiosities. They were prodigia, terrifying omens signaling that the sacred peace between Rome and its gods had been shattered. The sight of two suns in the daytime sky, followed by a night sun, would have been interpreted as a catastrophic breakdown of the natural order, a direct reflection of the political and military chaos Hannibal was unleashing upon Italy. After such an event, the Roman Senate would have immediately consulted its religious officials, the pontiffs and augurs, to determine which gods were angry and what rituals of atonement were required to restore divine favor. Public sacrifices, days of prayer, and elaborate ceremonies would have been decreed, all in a desperate attempt to turn the heavens back in Rome's favor. But what physical phenomena could have created such a convincing double sun and a night sun? The two suns by day could have been an incredibly vivid and complex sun-dog, its mock suns so brilliant they seemed to rival the real star. Alternatively, a rare daylight meteor, a bolide, blazing across the sky with the intensity of a miniature sun, could have been mistaken for a second star. As for the sun seen by night, one plausible explanation is a massive, sustained outburst of ball lightning, a rare and poorly understood atmospheric electrical phenomenon that can glow with a sun-like intensity for many seconds. Another possibility is the eerie glow of a persistent aurora, visible much further south than usual, painting the night sky with a false dawn. For the Romans, however, the cause was not scientific. It was divine. The appearance of two suns was a cosmic verdict on their war, a sign that the very fabric of their world was fraying under the stress of an invasion that brought them to the brink of collapse. 3 centuries after the Romans trembled at their double sun, a similar dread settled over the fields of England. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, a year-by-year record of English history, contains a stark and eerie entry for the year 774. In the Peterborough manuscript, a scribe wrote that the sun was as if it were turned to blood and a cross appeared in the sky, and afterwards 2 suns were seen at once. Imagine the scene, a dawn where the sun does not shine gold but glows a deep, unsettling crimson, as if the heavens themselves were wounded. Then, a cross of light etches itself across this bloody sky, a symbol of profound and terrifying significance to the devout Christian population. And as if that were not enough, the climax of this celestial drama is the appearance of 2 suns hanging together in the heavens. For the Anglo-Saxons, this sequence was not a simple weather report. It was a divine message of immense power, a prophecy of war, pestilence, or the coming of the apocalypse, written in the only language everyone could understand, the sky itself. For centuries, this account was viewed as pure superstition or religious allegory. But modern science has uncovered a startling piece of evidence that suggests the Anglo-Saxons witnessed something very real and terrifyingly global. In 2012, Japanese physicist Fusa Miyake analyzed the rings of ancient cedar trees and discovered a colossal, mysterious spike in radioactive carbon-14. This spike was dated precisely to the year 774. This finding, now known as the Miyake event, points to an enormous influx of cosmic radiation that bathed the entire planet. What could cause such a radiation spike? The prime suspects are either a supernova occurring relatively close to our solar system or an extreme solar storm, a coronal mass ejection of unimaginable power from our own sun. Either event would have violently compressed Earth's magnetic field, allowing high-energy particles to pour into the upper atmosphere. The visual effects would have been beyond anything in living memory. The sun turning to blood could describe an aurora of unprecedented scale and color, visible even at midday, staining the sky a deep red. The cross could have been a complex interaction of these auroral lights, forming radiant bars that intersected. And the two suns, that could have been the most intense and persistent sun-dog display ever recorded, created by sunlight refracting through a sky now thick with ice crystals seeded by the altered upper atmosphere. The Anglo-Saxon chronicler was not recording a fantasy. He was likely documenting the visible aftermath of a cosmic catastrophe, a near miss from a stellar event powerful enough to rewrite the very chemistry of our planet, and in doing so, create a vision of two suns that would be seared into human memory for over 1,000 years. Just 2 generations after the Anglo-Saxon blood sun, a similar celestial warning appeared over the heart of Europe. In the year 807, Frankish chronicles record that 2 suns and 2 moons were seen in the heavens. This was no fleeting vision. It occurred as the great Emperor Charlemagne, the father of Europe, was in his final years. The timing was everything. For a society that saw the emperor as the singular sun around which all political life revolved, the appearance of a second sun could mean only one thing: a challenge to his absolute authority. The appearance of a second moon alongside it compounded the omen, suggesting a complete doubling and therefore a fundamental splitting of the entire cosmic order he represented. This was widely interpreted as a direct portent of the emperor's impending death and the chaos that would inevitably follow, and indeed Charlemagne died just 3 years later. His vast empire, which had united much of Western Europe, did not survive intact. It was fractured by the Treaty of Verdun, divided among his 3 grandsons, leading to centuries of conflict that shaped the map of the continent. The celestial warning proved tragically accurate, but what natural spectacle could have produced such a convincing display of dual suns and dual moons? The most plausible explanation lies in a complex and magnificent halo display. These atmospheric phenomena occur when sunlight or moonlight refracts through millions of perfectly aligned, hexagon-shaped ice crystals suspended high in the cirrus clouds. Under the right conditions, this can create sun-dogs, also known as parhelia, which are brilliant, concentrated patches of light that appear on either side of the sun, often mimicking its brightness and color. A similar effect can occur with the moon, creating moon-dogs or parazelani. A particularly intense and persistent halo event could have presented the Frankish people with a sky that seemed populated by multiple suns and moons for hours on end. For a people without our scientific understanding, this was not a beautiful trick of the light. It was a divine bulletin, a cosmic announcement that the stable world Charlemagne had built was about to shatter, and that the heavens themselves were preparing for a new divided age. 2 suns fighting in the sky. This is how the English monk William of Malmesbury described the celestial spectacle of 1133. He wrote of a brilliant mock sun appearing to the north, one that did not simply shine, but seemed to engage the true sun in a celestial duel. This terrifying vision of cosmic conflict was followed just days later by a deep and unnerving solar eclipse. For a medieval mind, this sequence was not a coincidence. It was a clear narrative written in the heavens, a battle between divine forces that culminated in the sun itself being blotted out, a sure sign of divine displeasure or impending disaster. The chronicler saw this as an omen for the civil war known as the Anarchy, a brutal struggle for the English throne that would tear the country apart for nearly 2 decades. The 2 suns were not just lights in the sky, they were the embodiments of the 2 rival claimants, King Stephen and the Empress Matilda, locked in a struggle that mirrored the conflict in the heavens. This interpretation reveals the very heart of medieval cosmology, a world view where the celestial and the terrestrial were intimately, dangerously linked. Every event in the sky was a direct commentary on the affairs of humanity, a message from God that required immediate and careful interpretation. The fighting suns were a divine forecast of the bloodshed to come. Over 50 years later, a different kind of prediction would plunge all of Europe into a panic amplified by the same impossible vision. In 1186, a collective dread had been building for months. Astrologers working from complex planetary tables had forecast a catastrophic alignment of planets within a specific constellation. They warned that this conjunction would unleash a great wind that would scour the earth, bringing famine, pestilence, and the death of kings. As the predicted day of doom approached, reports began to flood in from across the continent. Witnesses claimed to see the ultimate confirmation of their fears: two suns in the sky. In an age where astrology was considered a serious science, the appearance of the twin suns was not just an omen, it was the final piece of a terrifying puzzle. The learned and the common folk alike believed the heavens were fulfilling the prophecy. Churches filled with penitents seeking last-minute salvation. Chronicles tell us that in some cities people walled themselves inside their homes, hoping to ride out the prophesied apocalypse, and then the day arrived and passed. The great wind never came, the world did not end. The astrological prediction had failed, but the reports of the twin suns remained, a mystery etched into the historical record. So what were these medieval monks and townsfolk actually seeing? The fighting suns described by William of Malmesbury are a textbook description of a parhelion, a sun-dog. When the sun is low on the horizon, its light can pass through a veil of falling, plate-shaped ice crystals. These crystals act like tiny prisms, bending the light to create intensely bright spots to the left and right of the sun. To an observer, they look like duplicate suns, and their position can shift with the moving ice cloud, creating the illusion of movement, of a dance, or even a fight. The 1186 event was likely a similar, widespread display of atmospheric optics. Its psychological impact magnified 1,000-fold by the pre-existing astrological terror. These two accounts, separated by half a century, show us a powerful pattern. In the medieval world, a double sun was never just a weather phenomenon. It was a symbol, a portent, and a weapon of mass persuasion. It could justify a civil war or bring an empire to its knees in prayer, proving that the true power of this mystery lies not in the light itself, but in the meaning we are so desperate to assign it. A red sun of blood rose beside the pale, dimmed one. This vision from the Norse sagas is not mere poetic license, but a specific and chilling omen recorded in the saga of Hakon Hakansson, written down around the year 1230. The account describes the sky before a great battle, the true sun losing its strength while a second crimson orb burned beside it. For a Viking warrior, this was more than a strange weather event. It was a direct signal from the gods, a scene pulled from the very prophecies of their doom. They believed in the Fimbulwinter, a great winter that would last for 3 years without a summer, a prelude to the final battle of Ragnarök, the twilight of the gods and the end of the world. A dim sun paired with a bloody twin fit this apocalyptic script perfectly, a sign that the great wolf Fenrir was breaking his bonds and that the final war was at hand. Seeing this in the sky before a clash of armies would have filled the most hardened fighter with a primal dread or a furious, desperate courage, for what did mortal combat matter if the cosmos itself was dying? But what natural forces could have staged such a theatrically grim display? The description of a dimmed sun alongside a bright red mock sun points strongly to a dual atmospheric phenomenon. The primary sun growing dim suggests a thick, high-altitude haze, perhaps from volcanic ash suspended in the stratosphere. We know from ice core samples that a significant volcanic eruption occurred in Iceland around 1226, just a few years before this saga was written. Such an eruption could have ejected vast amounts of fine ash and sulfate aerosols into the air, creating a veil that diffused the sun's light, making it appear pale and weak for years afterward. Against this darkened canvas, a vivid sundog would have appeared with startling intensity. The red color is a key clue. When the sun is low, its light passes through more atmosphere, scattering the blue light and leaving the red to dominate. A sundog formed in these conditions, especially through ash-laden skies, would indeed glow a deep, bloody crimson, a second, menacing sun that perfectly matched the mythology of a world sliding into its final act. The Norse did not see a simple trick of the light. They saw their deepest fears and their ultimate destiny written across the heavens, proving once again that a double sun is never just a spectacle. It is a mirror reflecting our most powerful beliefs about order, chaos, and the end of all things. The heavens delivered their verdict to the Goryeo court in the autumn of 1365. The official annals, the Goryosa, record the event with stark, bureaucratic clarity. Two suns rose together and stood in the sky. This was not a piece of folklore, but a state document, a formal entry in the history of a dynasty that was then in its final, faltering years. In the Confucian worldview that governed Korea, the sky was a perfect moral mirror. A single, unwavering sun represented the king, the one true ruler whose virtue brought order to the world. The appearance of a second sun was the most severe celestial rebuke possible. It signaled that the ruler had lost the mandate of heaven, that his moral failure was so profound it had caused a fundamental tear in the cosmic order. For the Goryeo dynasty, already weakened by internal strife and the rising power of the new Ming dynasty in China, this omen was a public and terrifying announcement of their impending collapse. The court astronomers who logged this event were not just scientists, they were political and moral philosophers, and their record was an indictment. So what phenomenon could have been so convincing that it was formally entered into the dynasty's history as a second sunrise? One compelling explanation is a superior mirage, a complex atmospheric refraction common over cold seas. The Korean peninsula, surrounded by water, provides the perfect conditions. When a layer of warm air sits over a much colder layer of air, it can act like a lens, bending light from over the horizon and projecting a distorted, elevated image of the sun. This can create the stunning illusion of a second sun rising alongside the real one, an image that appears solid and real. Alternatively, it could have been a parhelion of exceptional brilliance and duration, a sundog so vivid and stable it seemed to stand motionless in the dawn sky for an extended period. Both events are rare, but both are physically possible and would have been utterly persuasive to a society that read the sky for meaning. The Goryeo record stands as a sobering testament to how a natural spectacle could become a political and spiritual crisis, a celestial judgment that echoed the very real earthly forces gathering to end a royal line. Across the ocean, a prophecy of two suns foretold the end of a world. In the memories preserved by the Nahua elders and recorded by the friar Bernardino de Sahagun, a series of terrible omens preceded the arrival of the Spanish. The eighth omen was unequivocal. A second sun was seen in the sky. For the people of the Aztec Empire, this was not a simple curiosity. It was a sign of the most profound cosmic significance. They lived in the era of the fifth sun, a world age that, according to their mythology, was destined to end in catastrophic earthquakes. The appearance of a second sun could only signal that the cycle was turning, that the forces of destruction were gathering to erase their sun and usher in a sixth age. This omen struck at the very heart of their spiritual identity, creating a paralyzing sense of inevitable doom just as a new, unknown force approached their shores. But what celestial event could have been so powerful it was remembered for generations as a second sun? One compelling explanation points to Venus. The Aztecs were master astronomers, and Venus, which they associated with the god Quetzalcoatl, held immense importance. A brilliant, close conjunction of Venus and the Sun, where the planet appeared in the daytime sky with a dazzling, sun-like intensity, could have perfectly fit the description. Alternatively, a great comet, its head glowing with a fierce, concentrated light and its tail streaming like a second path of sunlight, could have been interpreted as a rival star. The timing is critical. These accounts were compiled decades after the conquest, a cultural memory of a real event that became woven into the narrative of their collapse. The psychological impact is undeniable. When the Spanish conquistadors, with their alien armor, horses, and weapons, finally arrived, they did not just represent a foreign army. To many, they embodied the fulfillment of that celestial prophecy, the agents of the destruction that the two suns had promised. The sky had spoken, and an empire already braced for an apocalypse found it arriving on ships from the Eastern Sea. The sky over Basel did not simply produce a second sun, it staged a war. In the summer of 1566, a remarkable woodcut was printed and distributed across Switzerland, a form of mass media known as a broadside. It depicts a city under a sky filled with terror and wonder. Black spheres swarm like angry insects, some of them appearing to crash into one another. Most strikingly, the image shows the sun engaged in a direct confrontation with another sun of equal brilliance, a celestial duel witnessed by the terrified citizens below. The accompanying text describes a battle in the heavens where the sun had fought with the other sun. This was not a private vision, but a public event witnessed by hundreds, an occurrence so profound it was deemed necessary to document and disseminate the news. To understand why this happened, you must feel the atmosphere of 1566. Europe was tearing itself apart in the religious wars of the Protestant Reformation. Every strange event, from a deformed birth in a village to a comet in the sky, was interpreted as a sign from God, a commentary on the great schism between Catholics and Protestants. For the people of Basel, a city caught in these turbulent currents, the swarming black spheres and fighting suns were not atmospheric phenomena. They were a divine broadcast, a live report from the cosmic front lines of their own spiritual conflict. The heavens were literally at war, mirroring the violence and division on the ground. This interpretation feels almost inevitable for the time, but it leaves a stubborn question. What were the black spheres? Modern skeptics point to complex halo effects and sun dogs, explaining the fighting suns with familiar optics. But the woodcut is very specific about the other element, the numerous dark, round objects moving erratically in the sky. This detail has made the Basel broadside a cornerstone case for historians of unidentified aerial phenomena. They argue that while the people of the 16th century interpreted the event through a religious lens, what they were describing bears a striking resemblance to modern UFO sightings, complete with multiple, independently maneuvering objects. Could a massive display of sun dogs also produce swarms of black spheres? It seems unlikely. This forces us to consider a more extraordinary possibility, that the citizens of Basel witnessed something truly unexplained, an event that their worldview could only process as a battle of divine symbols. The Basel broadside stands at a crossroads between two mysteries. It is a perfect historical document of how a double sun could shape human destiny, fueling religious fervor and fear. But it is also a tantalizing, persistent anomaly, a detailed report of something in our sky that, even today, defies any simple explanation. By the 16th century, a new kind of witness was looking at the sky. The Renaissance scholar Francesco Morolico did not see a divine omen in 1533, he saw a puzzle. When a brilliant false sun appeared beside the real one, Morolico did not reach for a book of prophecies. Instead, he reached for his pen and sketched what he saw, creating one of the first known scientific drawings of a parhelion. His methodical observation and documentation marked a profound shift in the human response to this mystery. The light in the sky was becoming less a message from the gods and more a question for natural philosophy, a phenomenon to be understood through reason and careful record-keeping. This new approach was put to the test decades later in Rome. In 1597, multiple independent witnesses across the city reported seeing a second sun. This was not a single terrified observer, but a chorus of accounts from different viewpoints, a crucial development in establishing an event as objectively real. The Renaissance mind, now steeped in principles of empirical evidence, could begin to separate the physical event from its interpretation. The fact of the double sun was accepted, but its meaning was no longer automatically one of divine wrath or political upheaval. It was perhaps simply a property of light and ice. This was the slow, quiet birth of the scientific method applied to one of history's greatest sky mysteries. The awe remained, but the fear began to recede, replaced by a burning curiosity to learn the rules behind the illusion. What would happen when this new, rational gaze was turned upon the entire cosmos, and what even stranger visions might it reveal? Captain John Smith faced a sky that lied. In the desperate spring of 1607, as the Jamestown colony teetered on the edge of starvation, the seasoned explorer recorded a chilling sight: two suns burning above the Virginia wilderness. For a man leading a group of gentlemen unaccustomed to hardship, this celestial doubling was more than a spectacle. It was a psychological blow in a landscape that seemed determined to break them. They were already surrounded by a strange and often hostile natural world, plagued by disease and locked in a tense standoff with the Powhatan Confederacy. The appearance of a second sun would have felt like the ultimate confirmation that the very laws of nature were different here, that they were in a place where God's order had been suspended. This was not the divine omen of an emperor, but a personal taunt from a merciless sky. Yet the environmental reality of the Chesapeake Bay provides a perfect natural explanation. In early spring, the clash between the cold air over the Atlantic waters and the warming air over the land creates ideal conditions for a powerful atmospheric phenomenon. The sky can fill with a haze of ice crystals, tiny hexagonal plates drifting in the high cirrus clouds. When the sun rises or sets, its light passes through this crystalline veil, refracting to create brilliant, concentrated patches of light on either side. These sundogs can appear so vivid and defined that they are indistinguishable from a real sun, a perfect duplicate hanging in the sky. For colonists already pushed to the brink of their sanity by hunger and fear, this beautiful trick of physics would have been utterly terrifying. It reinforced their profound isolation, a sign that they were not just lost in a new world, but that the new world itself was fundamentally wrong. Smith's account is a stark reminder that the vision of twin suns is not always about kings and empires. Sometimes it is the private terror of a man watching the sky betray him, while he tries to keep a handful of souls alive in a land that feels like it has two hearts, both of them cold. The Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb ruled an empire of scorching sun and sharp ambition. In 1661, as he consolidated his power over the Indian subcontinent, his court astrologers recorded a sight that threatened the very symbolism of his reign, a second sun glowing near the horizon. For a ruler who presented himself as the singular sun around whom all political life orbited, this was not a mere spectacle, it was a direct celestial challenge. The Mughal court maintained a sophisticated observatory, and its scholars were masters of both astronomy, the mathematical mapping of the heavens, and astrology, the art of reading divine will in those same stars. To them, there was no contradiction. A stable, predictable cosmos reflected a stable, just empire. The appearance of a rival sun was the ultimate sign of instability, a potential omen of rebellion, invasion, or a loss of divine favor that could shake the foundations of his authority. The astrologers would have immediately begun complex calculations, searching their charts for a planetary alignment or a celestial event that could explain this dangerous portent and advise the emperor on the rituals or actions needed to restore cosmic balance. But what natural event could have so convincingly mimicked a second sun over the plains of India? One strong possibility lies in the intense heat of the subcontinent. The hot air rising from the arid plains can create a powerful superior mirage. When a layer of cooler, denser air is trapped beneath this rising heat, it can act as a lens, bending and distorting light from just below the horizon. This can project a magnified, shimmering image of the sun itself, creating the stunning and persistent illusion of a twin sun hanging in the sky. Alternatively, the court astronomers might have witnessed a brilliant conjunction. The planet Venus, often called the morning or evening star, can under perfect conditions of clarity and position become visible in the daytime sky as a dazzling, steady point of light. If it appeared exceptionally close to the sun during dawn or dusk, it could easily have been mistaken for a smaller companion star. The same is true for Mercury, though it is fainter and more difficult to see. For Aurangzeb's court, the scientific explanation was secondary to the political meaning. The record of the second sun stands as a testament to a timeless truth, that even in the most advanced empires, a crack in the sky could be perceived as a crack in the throne itself. The year 1680 brought a celestial visitor of terrifying brilliance. Across Europe and the American colonies, the great comet of Kerch blazed in the daytime sky, its nucleus glowing with a fierce, concentrated light and its tail streaming across the heavens like a second, ethereal path of sunlight. For countless observers without access to telescopes, this created the perfect conditions for a profound misinterpretation. The comet's head, positioned alarmingly close to the sun, could appear as a second, slightly dimmer orb. Its vast, luminous tail, sweeping upward from the horizon, completed the illusion of a duplicate star, a twin sun hanging ominously in the blue. Reports of two suns flooded in from terrified witnesses who believed the cosmic order had been permanently broken. Yet this same object of superstition would become a cornerstone of modern science. A young Isaac Newton, watching the comet's unwavering path, recognized it as the ultimate test for his new laws of motion and universal gravitation. He realized that if his mathematics could predict the comet's return, it would prove that the same force that made an apple fall also guided the motion of the heavens. He calculated its immense elliptical orbit, proving it was not a divine portent but a celestial body obeying predictable physical laws. The very phenomenon that made people fear a broken sky was the key that unlocked its underlying order. The Great Comet of 1680 thus represents a pivotal moment in our story, a point where the mystery of the twin suns began its slow transformation from an omen of doom into a question of physics. A London newspaper from 1708 provides a stark contrast to the terror of earlier accounts. The London Gazette, an official publication of the British Crown, printed a formal report describing two parhelia or mock suns seen clearly for several hours. The very language here marks a turning point. The term parhelia, a scientific label derived from the Greek for beside the sun, is used matter-of-factly for a public readership. This was no longer a supernatural omen to be feared, but a meteorological event to be reported and understood. The article details how the phenomenon appeared, noting its duration and clarity, treating it as a fact of nature rather than a message from God. This reflects a profound shift in the 18th century mind, a world increasingly illuminated by the cool light of reason where even the most impossible sky could be catalogued and demystified. But what exactly were these parhelia that science was now beginning to explain? The report itself hints at the mechanism, describing the presence of a hazy, high cloud cover. Early modern scientists had correctly deduced that these mock suns were a trick of light and ice. We now know this as the sun-dog phenomenon. It occurs when the sun hangs low in the sky and its light passes through a veil of cirrus clouds filled with countless plate-shaped ice crystals. Imagine each of these microscopic crystals is a perfectly formed hexagonal prism, like a tiny, floating piece of a honeycomb. As these plates drift downward, they naturally orient themselves with their flat faces nearly horizontal. When sunlight enters one face of a crystal and exits through another, it refracts or bends at a precise 60-degree angle. This bending concentrates the light into two intensely bright spots, one on either side of the sun, creating the illusion of two additional suns. The colors often observed, a subtle red on the inside fading to a pale blue on the outside, are caused by the same scattering of light that gives us vibrant sunsets. The London Gazette report captures a moment where public knowledge was catching up with scientific discovery. The mystery of the twin suns was being solved, its power to terrify slowly dissolving into an understanding of atmospheric physics. Yet, even as science provided the answers, the sheer beauty and strangeness of the spectacle remained, a reminder that some wonders do not need supernatural explanations to be truly awe-inspiring. That same century, a Swedish pastor named Jacob Hall looked up into a frozen sky and saw a miracle of mathematics. His diary entry from the bitterly cold winter of 1734 describes not one, but 5 separate suns arrayed across the heavens, connected by brilliant white arcs and pillars of light. This was no fleeting omen, but a prolonged and impossibly complex celestial artwork painted across the canvas of a Scandinavian winter. For Pastor Hall, a man of faith, this would have been a vision of divine geometry, a glimpse into the perfect, crystalline order God had woven into creation. His detailed account gives us a perfect case study to dismantle this spectacle into its scientific components, to understand exactly how ice and light conspire to build a sky of multiple suns. The primary actor in this drama is the humble, 6-sided ice crystal, a tiny, floating prism that forms in the high, cold cirrus clouds. When these crystals are plate-shaped and drift downward, they act like countless microscopic lenses. Sunlight entering one face of the hexagon and exiting through another bends at a precise 22-degree angle. This consistent refraction is the master key. It creates the most common element of the display, the 22-degree halo, a perfect, faintly colored circle with the sun at its center, as if the sun were the pupil of a giant, luminous eye. But the most convincing duplicates are the sun dogs or parhelia. These form when the plate-shaped crystals orient themselves with their flat faces nearly horizontal. Light passing through them is focused into 2 intensely bright spots, one on either side of the sun, sitting right on the rim of the 22-degree halo. These mock suns can shine with a brilliance that rivals the true sun, often showing a vivid red glow on the side closest to it. In the frigid air of a Swedish winter, the atmosphere can become so thick with these perfectly aligned crystals that additional, fainter sun dogs can even appear, creating the additional orbs that Pastor Hall documented. Then come the pillars. When the crystals are tiny, rod-like columns tumbling through the air, they can reflect the light of the sun, or even the bright sun dogs, directly back toward the observer. This creates vertical columns of light that seem to shoot upward from the celestial orbs, connecting them in a radiant architecture. What the pastor witnessed was the ultimate halo display, a combination of the 22-degree ring, multiple parhelia, and light pillars all working in concert. It was a demonstration of physics so precise and widespread that it could be reliably predicted to occur in the right frozen conditions. His awe was justified, but the cause was not supernatural. It was the hidden structure of water itself, magnified millions of times over, performing a silent, dazzling light show in the cold, thin air high above a world that could only look up and wonder. A Boston newspaper carried the story in 1762. The Boston Evening Post reported that citizens had looked up to see a double sun hanging in the sky. This was not a private terror, but a public spectacle documented in the public prints for all to read. The political air in the colonies was already thick with tension. The Stamp Act protests were just 3 years away, and the first murmurs of revolution were stirring in taverns and town halls. In this supercharged atmosphere, a celestial event like a double sun was never just a weather report. For a population steeped in a religious tradition that saw God's hand in all worldly affairs, this was a divine editorial on the growing conflict with the British Crown. A second sun could be interpreted as a clear sign of a rival authority, a heavenly endorsement of the colonial cause against the singular son of King George. It was an omen that the established order was being challenged from on high. Yet, the very fact that it was printed in a newspaper marks a fascinating duality in the colonial American mind. The educated elite, including many of the founding fathers, were deeply immersed in the Enlightenment. They read the latest scientific journals from Europe and understood concepts like atmospheric refraction. For them, the double sun was likely a parhelion, a known optical effect, but for the general populace, the divine interpretation held powerful sway. This single newspaper article captures a moment of transition where a society balanced on the knife edge between ancient superstition and modern reason, and where a crack in the sky could be seen as both a scientific curiosity and a beacon of liberty. The light itself was a trick of ice crystals, but the meaning people poured into it would help fuel a revolution. A second sun blazed over France in 1803, a year before Napoleon Bonaparte would seize the imperial crown from the hands of the Pope and place it upon his own head. For his supporters, this was no random trick of the atmosphere. It was a celestial coronation, a divine affirmation that a new sun king was rising to lead the nation. The appearance of a twin sun perfectly mirrored Napoleon's own unprecedented act of self-creation, a sign that the heavens themselves were doubling their light to bless his new empire. His propagandists would have seized upon this omen, weaving it into a narrative of destiny and invincibility that helped legitimize his audacious grab for power. Yet, for his enemies across Europe, the monarchies who saw him as a dangerous usurper, the very same double sun was an omen of a different sort. It signaled cosmic disorder, a terrifying duplication of authority that threatened the God-given right of kings. The same light in the sky was either a blessing or a curse, depending entirely on which flag you fought under. This manipulation of a natural event reveals the raw power of mass psychology during wartime. When the fate of nations hangs in the balance, people become desperate for signs, for any hint from the universe about who will win and who will lose. A double sun becomes a blank screen onto which an entire society projects its deepest hopes and its most profound fears. 9 years later, that fear would become a reality for Napoleon himself. In 1812, as his vast Grand Armée massed for the invasion of Russia, another double sun was widely reported. This time, the omen was not one of ascension but of looming catastrophe. To the Russian people and their commanders, the second sun was a blazing symbol of righteous defiance, a heavenly promise that their motherland was under divine protection and that two suns could not rule its vast skies. For the superstitious soldiers in Napoleon's multinational force, many of whom were already uneasy about marching into the endless Russian steppes, the sight would have been deeply demoralizing. It was a portent of duality and division, a sign that their emperor's singular will was about to be fractured. The subsequent disaster of the Russian campaign, the brutal winter retreat that destroyed an army, seemed to fulfill the omen with terrible precision. The two suns of 1812 were not the cause of his defeat, but they became a powerful part of the story, a psychological weapon that worked upon the minds of men long before the snows began to fall. These two accounts from the Napoleonic era show the final, spectacular flare-up of the double sun as a dominant political omen in the Western world. Here was a man who shaped reality with his own ambition, yet even he could not control the meaning of a light in the sky. The phenomenon itself was the same as it had been for the Romans and the Anglo-Saxons, a simple refraction of light through ice crystals. But its power to shape human destiny, to crown an emperor or foretell his ruin, was as real as any cannonade. The ground itself seemed to scream in 1811, as the Mississippi Valley was torn apart by the most powerful earthquakes in American history. Amidst the terror of the New Madrid tremors, which rang church bells in Boston and reversed the flow of the Mississippi River, another strange report surfaced from the shaken frontier. Settlers and soldiers, their world physically breaking apart, looked up to see two suns hanging in a fractured sky. This was not a simple omen of political change, but a phenomenon born from the planet's own violent convulsions. How could the grinding of tectonic plates possibly create a vision of twin suns? The answer may lie in a mysterious and controversial phenomenon known as earthquake lights. During periods of intense seismic stress, the immense pressure on certain types of rock, particularly those rich in quartz, can generate powerful electrical charges. This pent-up energy is released into the air, sometimes manifesting as glowing spheres, floating orbs, or even vast, silent sheets of light that illuminate the horizon. To a traumatized witness, a brilliant, sustained ball of this energy positioned near the sun could easily be mistaken for a second star, a false dawn born from the hellish depths below. But there is another, more atmospheric possibility. The colossal energy released by the New Madrid quakes did not just shake the ground, it violently disturbed the air itself. The sudden, massive displacement of earth and water would have sent powerful pressure waves rippling through the atmosphere. These waves can act like invisible lenses, bending and distorting light in unpredictable ways. Under the right conditions, this seismic turbulence could have generated a superior mirage of incredible complexity, projecting a shimmering, duplicate image of the sun that appeared to hang beside the real one in the chaotic sky. The reports from the New Madrid sequence present a compelling fusion of geology and optics. When the very Earth is your enemy, the sky can become its canvas, painting illusions with the brutal brushstrokes of tectonic force. This account forces us to reconsider other historical twin sun events, wondering how many were not messages from the gods, but the dying light of a landscape under unimaginable strain. A strange sun hung over the age of industry. In the summer of 1851, London was the capital of the world, and its crown jewel was the Crystal Palace, a vast cathedral of glass and iron built to house the Great Exhibition. Visitors from every corner of the globe marveled at the steam hammers and telegraphs, the very symbols of human progress. Then they looked up. Numerous reports from that season describe a second, phantom sun glowing in the hazy sky above the city. This was no longer an omen for kings, but a spectacle for the masses, a mystery witnessed by thousands of engineers, merchants, and families. The Victorian mind was a place of fascinating contradiction, fiercely rational yet deeply fascinated by the supernatural. They built a future of iron and logic, yet they filled their parlors with spirit boards and attended seances. The double sun was the perfect phenomenon for this divided consciousness, a scientific puzzle that still felt like a ghost in the machine of the universe. So what made this particular double sun appear over the world's most modern city? The answer may lie in the very engine of its progress, coal. London's air was thick with industrial pollution, a permanent pall of smoke and soot particles spewing from countless chimneys. This human-made haze did not just dim the sun, it transformed the sky into a giant optical laboratory. The countless microscopic particles of pollution acted as a filter, scattering the sun's light and creating a pervasive, glowing backdrop. When this polluted air mixed with the natural moisture of the Thames basin, it could create a soupy atmosphere rich with both water droplets and industrial aerosols. Under these conditions, a common sundog could be utterly transformed. The normally crisp, colored mock suns would be diffused and magnified by the haze, becoming softer, larger, and more persistent, glowing like a second, ethereal sun through the smoky veil. The pollution did not just cause the effect, it perfected it, creating the ideal canvas for a celestial illusion that felt both scientific and strangely magical. For the visitors leaving the Crystal Palace, their minds buzzing with the wonders of technology, the sight of two suns would have been the ultimate paradox. It was a reminder that for all their mastery over nature, the sky could still present a mystery that their new science could explain, but never quite strip of its wonder. Deep in the Siberian taiga, weeks before the sky tore itself apart, the reindeer began to act strangely. they grew restless, their herders whispering of a tension that clung to the very air. Then came the lights. Anecdotal accounts from the Viking people and a few Russian settlers described nights that refused to grow fully dark, illuminated by a strange, shifting glow on the northern horizon. More compelling are the scattered reports from the days immediately before June 30th, 1908. Witnesses spoke of seeing not just one sun, but a second, moving light in the daytime sky, a brilliant point that tracked alongside the true sun before vanishing. Could these have been the final, fleeting warnings of the object that would soon unleash hell on Earth? The leading scientific theory suggests the Tunguska event was not an impact, but the airburst of a stony asteroid or a comet fragment, exploding roughly 5 miles above the ground. As this cosmic bullet, estimated to be nearly 200 feet across, screamed into the atmosphere at over 30,000 miles per hour, the pressures and temperatures became unimaginable. The friction of its passage would have vaporized its outer layers, causing it to glow with the intensity of a second sun. But what if it was already breaking apart? A fragmenting body, a swarm of smaller pieces traveling together, could easily explain the reports of multiple brilliant light sources. Each significant fragment, superheated to incandescence, would have appeared as a temporary miniature sun racing across the heavens. These were not stable sun dogs or mirages, but the death throes of a celestial intruder, creating brief, terrifying apparitions of twin suns in the moments before the fireball that would flatten 800 square miles of forest. The strange prelude lights were not a separate mystery, but the opening act of a single catastrophic event, a final, dazzling display from a visitor that chose to announce its arrival with the oldest omen known to man, a second sun in the sky, moments before it erased its own message with the force of 1,000 suns. The mud of Flanders was a world without a sun, a place of perpetual twilight and despair. Yet in this landscape of death, a soldier's letter home speaks of a vision that defied the gloom. He wrote of looking out across no man's land one evening and seeing not one, but 2 suns sinking into the western haze, their light a dull, bloody orange against the churned earth. For a man surrounded by the broken machinery of war, this celestial doubling was not a miracle. It was a psychological fracture, a sign that the universe itself had been driven as mad as the conflict he was trapped within. The constant shelling did more than just kill. It filled the air with a fine, suspended dust of pulverized brick, soil, and explosives. This man-made haze acted as a giant, chaotic lens. When the real sun hung low, its light would refract through this particulate fog, scattering and bending in unpredictable ways. Under the right conditions, this could project a shimmering, distorted copy of the sun, a phantom orb born directly from the violence below. It was not ice crystals high in the atmosphere that crafted this illusion, but the very residue of destruction. Imagine the profound disorientation of witnessing such a sight. In a place where every familiar rule of life had been suspended, where the ground could erupt without warning and death was random and impersonal, even the sun could not be trusted to be singular and constant. The soldier seeing 2 setting suns was not just observing a weather phenomenon, he was experiencing the ultimate symbol of his shattered reality. The sky, the one thing that should have remained untouched by the trenches, was now reflecting the grotesque duplication of the war itself, a world where everything was doubled, from the opposing trench lines to the endless cycles of attack and counterattack. This personal account from the trenches reminds us that the power of the twin suns is not just in the light, but in the mind of the beholder. In a peaceful field, it might be a curiosity. In the hell of 1915, it was a quiet, cosmic confirmation that nothing would ever be whole again. Admiral Richard Byard stood on the icy deck of his ship, staring at a sky that had betrayed him. During his historic polar expeditions of the 1920s, He and his crew documented some of the most disorienting visions ever recorded: entire mountain ranges floating in the air, phantom islands that appeared and vanished, and on several occasions, a second and even a third sun hanging in the frigid expanse. These were not mere sun dogs, but something far more complex and convincing, a phenomenon known as the Fata Morgana. In the extreme cold of the polar regions, the physics of the atmosphere becomes a master illusionist. A temperature inversion occurs where a layer of dense, intensely cold air is trapped beneath a ceiling of much warmer air. This creates a giant, natural lens in the sky. When light passes from the cold, dense air into the warm, thin air, it bends or refracts drastically. This bending can take the image of an object that is actually far below the horizon, like the sun just after it has set, and project its distorted, elevated image into the sky. The result is not a fuzzy blob, but a detailed, often towering mirage that can perfectly mimic the shape and light of the original. For an explorer like Bayard, this was more than a curiosity, it was a dire navigational hazard. A false sun could corrupt his celestial navigation readings, leading his ship dangerously off course. A phantom coastline could lure him toward non-existent safe harbors or away from real ones. His detailed logs of these events provided science with some of the clearest evidence of how a stable sky can become a hall of mirrors, where light itself is warped into creating perfect, believable duplicates of the world. This polar mirage is the ultimate expression of the twin sun mystery, a reminder that the most convincing illusions are not born from chaos, but from the silent, precise, and unforgiving laws of physics. The sky itself became a weapon in the war. Across the scattered theaters of World War II, a new kind of witness reported the old Omen, the combat pilot. Airmen returning from harrowing dogfights over Europe and the Pacific would speak of it in hushed tones, the appearance of another sun hanging in the combat zone. For a pilot locked in a life or death duel, this was not an atmospheric curiosity. It was a terrifying distraction, a crack in the fabric of reality at the very moment they needed absolute focus. The sheer stress of aerial combat, the G-forces, the lack of oxygen at high altitude, and the constant adrenaline could easily produce powerful hallucinations. A pilot's mind, pushed to its absolute limit, might desperately seek pattern and meaning in the blinding glare of the sun, creating a phantom double from pure psychological strain. Yet the consistency of these reports across different fronts and from highly trained, reliable observers suggests something more was happening in that wartime sky. One plausible explanation points to the tools of war themselves. Massive anti-aircraft searchlight batteries would comb the night skies, their incredibly powerful beams converging on a single point to illuminate a bomber. When these beams pierced through cloud layers or thick haze, they could create a diffuse, radiant glow so intense it mimicked a second, localized sun. For a pilot caught in that cone of light, it would feel as if a new, hostile star had been born solely to target him. Then there are the more enigmatic accounts that blur the line between known phenomena and outright mystery. Pilots began reporting small, fast-moving balls of light that would pace their aircraft, performing impossible maneuvers. They called them Foo Fighters. These glowing orbs, often described as metallic or fiery, would fly in tight formation with planes, sometimes one, sometimes several. To a pilot already seeing a double sun in the haze, the sudden appearance of a Foo Fighter could have been interpreted as a third, mobile sun, a silent, intelligent companion to the celestial illusion. This leads to the most speculative but compelling thread: secret military experiments. Both the Axis and Allies were racing to develop revolutionary weapons, from advanced aircraft to directed energy devices. Is it possible that what some pilots saw as a second sun was actually the test of a prototype weapon, a brilliant energy discharge, or the glare from an exotic propulsion system that was not yet meant to exist? We may never know for certain. The true nature of the World War II double sun remains fractured, a mosaic of human psychology, conventional warfare optics, unexplained aerial phenomena, and the shadowy secrets of a world consumed by conflict. It proves that even as humanity reached new technological heights, the ancient vision of a twin sun could still find a home, this time not as an omen for an emperor, but as a personal and terrifying specter for a man flying a metal crate through a sky full of fire. The ancient Omen found a new home in the space age, its mystery stripped down to physics and orbital mechanics. The most common culprit for modern twin sun reports is not a complex atmospheric illusion, but our closest planetary neighbor, Venus. When this world is at its brightest, positioned just right in the dawn or dusk sky, it can blaze with a steady, piercing light that cuts through the blue of day. For an unprepared observer, this brilliant, unwavering point of light near the sun is not a planet. It is an intruder star, a silent second sun hanging where none should be. This simple astronomical fact explains countless reports from the 20th and 21st centuries, grounding a celestial terror in the predictable rhythm of our solar system. Yet the space age also created a brand new source for this ancient vision, one born from human ambition. The fiery plumes of rocket launches, particularly the massive Saturn V moon rockets of the Apollo era, carved a new kind of sun into the heavens. As these colossal vehicles climbed through the upper atmosphere, their exhaust trails would expand in the near vacuum, illuminated by the still visible sun below the horizon. The result was a colossal, shimmering plume that could glow with the intensity of a miniature sun, a man-made star that would slowly drift and twist before fading away. Even more dramatic are the re-entries of spacecraft and discarded rocket stages. As they slam back into the thickening air, the friction superheats the material into a blazing fireball, often leaving a persistent, sun-like contrail that can hang in the sky for many minutes. These events are not rare. They have been witnessed by millions, from the glowing debris of Skylab's fall to the startling spirals seen over Norway, all triggering that same primal jolt of recognition, a second sun where logic insists there can only be one. The vision that once toppled empires is now a scheduled event, a byproduct of our own reach into the cosmos, leaving us to wonder if the awe it inspires is any less profound now that we know its cause. Our own pockets now hold the instruments of celestial discovery. In the 21st century, the ancient mystery of the twin suns has found a new arena, one built of pixels and bandwidth. Viral phenomena spread across social media, where a single video of a double sun can be seen by millions in a matter of hours, reigniting an age-old wonder with digital speed. One of the most famous examples erupted from the Philippines in 2018, when a video of two distinct orbs in a hazy sky captivated the internet. The initial panic and awe were palpable in the comments, a direct echo of the terror felt by Roman augurs or Aztec priests, yet the explanation was thoroughly modern. Experts quickly identified it as a classic case of lens flare, an internal reflection within the camera itself. When a bright light source like the sun strikes the lens at a specific angle, it can bounce between the glass elements, projecting a ghostly duplicate onto the sensor. The camera, not the sky, had created the second sun, proving that our technology can now generate its own convincing illusions. Another widespread image, often shared with claims of a planetary alignment, shows the sun with a perfect, smaller twin hovering directly above it. This is almost always the result of a simple Photoshop manipulation, a digital artifact that perpetuates the myth for a new generation. Yet, nestled among these fakes are genuine captures of atmospheric magic. Smartphone cameras are now so ubiquitous that they document brilliant, fleeting sun dogs that our ancestors would have struggled to describe. A person in Minnesota might snap a picture of a vivid parhelion during a winter dawn and share it online with the caption, "What are these two extra suns?" The phenomenon is the same one Francesco Moralico sketched in the 16th century, but its journey from a private observation to a global talking point is instantaneous. This is the new tradition of the mystery. We have not lost the capacity for awe, we have simply outsourced our sky gazing to a network of lenses and screens. The human urge to interpret a doubled sun remains as powerful as ever, whether the omen is read by a court astrologer or a viral tweet, reminding us that the line between a natural wonder and a digital phantom is now as thin as the glass on a smartphone. Science has finally given a name to the phantom suns that haunted our ancestors. After journeying through 30 accounts of celestial doubles from ancient Egypt to the digital age, a clear pattern of natural causes emerges from the chaos of history. The vast majority of these terrifying omens were not messages from the gods, but masterpieces of atmospheric optics, breathtaking light shows painted across the sky by the precise geometry of ice and air. The most common artist in this celestial gallery is the sun dog or parhelion. Picture a sky filled with countless microscopic hexagonal plates of ice, each one drifting downward like a tiny floating jewel. As these perfectly shaped crystals orient themselves with their flat faces nearly horizontal, they become a billion individual prisms. When sunlight enters one face of a hexagon and exits through another, it bends at an exact 22-degree angle. This precise refraction concentrates the light into two intensely bright spots, one on either side of the sun, often glowing with a vivid red or yellow hue. To an observer below, these are not fuzzy patches of light, but sharp, defined duplicates of the sun itself, convincing enough to make an emperor question his throne. Sometimes the sky builds an even more complex display. A parhelic circle is a brilliant white halo that runs parallel to the horizon, passing directly through the sun. It is created by sunlight reflecting off the vertical sides of those same ice crystals, forming a luminous racetrack around the sky. On this celestial track, the sun dogs appear as the brightest stations, but they can be joined by other phantom suns along the circle's path. Then there are the light pillars, those dramatic columns of light that seem to shoot upward from the sun, especially at dawn or dusk. These are not caused by refraction, but by reflection. When the atmosphere is filled with flat, plate-like crystals, they act like a vast swarm of microscopic mirrors, each one reflecting the sun's image directly back toward your eyes. The combined effect is a towering pillar of light, a celestial beacon that can easily be mistaken for a second sun rising or falling. But what about the accounts of a second sun that appears stable and separate, not just a brief flash of light? This is often the work of a superior mirage, a dramatic bending of light that occurs during a temperature inversion. Imagine a layer of cold, dense air trapped near the ground with a ceiling of much warmer air above it. This sandwich of temperatures acts like a giant lens in the sky. It can take the image of the real sun, which is actually just below the horizon, and project a distorted, elevated copy of it into the viewable sky. The result is not a fuzzy blob, but a shimmering, seemingly solid second sun that can hang in the air for minutes, even hours, perfectly explaining the prolonged dual sunrises that terrified entire dynasties. Each of these phenomena requires a very specific recipe of atmospheric ingredients, the right shape of ice crystal, the perfect angle of the sun, and a stable layer of air. Our ancestors witnessed these recipes coming together and saw divine wrath or cosmic endorsement. We look up at the same light and see the elegant, predictable laws of physics. Yet, in that understanding, have we lost the wonder? The answer is a resounding no. Knowing how a rainbow forms does not diminish its beauty, and understanding the crystalline architecture of a snowflake only deepens its magic. The scientific consensus does not rob these events of their power, it reveals a deeper truth. The true miracle is not that the sky breaks its own rules, but that it follows them with such breathtaking precision, creating visions of impossible suns from the simple, silent dance of frozen water and light. The phantom suns were never a sign of a broken cosmos, but a signature of its perfect and beautiful order. Our deep, almost primal reaction to twin suns is not a coincidence. It is woven into the very fabric of human psychology and culture, a pattern that emerges again and long before we understood the physics of sundogs. Our minds were hardwired to see meaning in this celestial doubling. This impulse is rooted in a cognitive bias known as pareidolia, our brain's tendency to find familiar patterns in random data. We see a face in the moon, a dragon in a cloud, and when our visual system processes two brilliant, sun-like orbs in the sky, it does not hesitate. It screams the conclusion: there are two suns. This is not a failure of perception, but a feature of it, a survival mechanism that helped our ancestors quickly identify potential threats or resources in a chaotic world. But the brain does not stop at simply recognizing the pattern. It immediately, irresistibly seeks a reason. This is where the human need for meaning, especially during times of crisis, takes over. When a society is under immense stress, from war and famine to political collapse, its people look for signs that explain their suffering or predict its outcome. A stable, predictable sky represents a stable, predictable world. The sudden, shocking appearance of a second sun is the ultimate symbol of that stability shattering. It is a cosmic Rorschach test onto which we project our deepest anxieties and our most fervent hopes. For the Roman facing Hannibal, it was a sign of the god's anger. For Napoleon's supporters, it was a divine coronation. The same light in the sky becomes either an omen of doom or a promise of glory, depending entirely on the fears and desires of the culture observing it. This is why the archetype of the twin sun is so powerful in our stories. It is a universal symbol of duality, choice, and fundamental change. In ancient mythologies, twin suns often represented conflicting forces, a god of order and a god of chaos, or the birth of a new world age. This symbolism flows directly into our modern mythology. Think of the iconic scene in Star Wars where Luke Skywalker gazes at a binary sunset on Tatooine, a moment that perfectly captures his longing for a destiny greater than his current life. The two suns are not just a backdrop, they are a visual representation of the dual nature of the Force, the pull between his mundane present and his cosmic future, the light and the dark. Science fiction is filled with worlds orbiting binary stars, using this image as a shorthand for the exotic, the unknown, and the fundamentally different. The twin suns tap into a collective memory, a cultural echo of all those times our ancestors looked up and saw the impossible. We have not outgrown this archetype, we have simply repackaged it. The sight still triggers a faint, ancient chill, a whisper from a time when the sky was a living storybook, and a second sun was the most dramatic headline it could possibly write. We have traveled from the deserts of ancient Egypt to the trenches of World War I, tracing a single, impossible vision across 30 chapters of human history. We now understand the science, the elegant physics of ice crystals and refracted light that crafts phantom suns from thin air. We can label a sundog, predict a superior mirage, and explain away the planet Venus. The how has been answered, yet the greater mystery only deepens. Why did a pharaoh stake his religious revolution on this site? Why did emperors from Rome to Korea see their own power mirrored and threatened in that second orb? The answer is that we are meaning makers. A crack in the sky is a void, and the human mind cannot abide a void. We rush to fill it with our deepest fears, our most desperate hopes, our political struggles, and our spiritual longings. The twin suns are a celestial Rorschach test, and the image we see reflected is always the story of our own time. This is the true thread connecting us to every chronicler, every soldier, and every sovereign who ever looked up in awe. It is not the light itself, but our relentless human need to understand what that light means for us. So the next time you find yourself under an open sky, take a moment and truly look. Watch the dawn break or the sunset paint the clouds. Be that curious witness. If you are ever lucky enough to see something strange, a light that does not belong, capture it, question it, and share it. The conversation between humanity and the heavens is the oldest story ever told, and your sighting could be the next line in that eternal chronicle. Tell us what you see in the comments below. The mystery is waiting. Thank you for joining this journey through time and sky. If these stories of phantom suns captivated you, please show your support by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Tap that notification bell so you do not miss our next exploration into the forgotten corners of history. We are already preparing a deep dive into the ancient accounts of eclipses that terrified kings and halted armies, celestial events that were once seen as the final, furious blink of a dying god. Your curiosity fuels these investigations, so tell us in the comments which historical mystery we should uncover together next.